Good afternoon, everybody. I think we're going to get started, even though there are some people still filtering in through security downstairs. A warm welcome to everybody that's here today at the Shard and those of you who are joining us online today. I'm Richard Roberts. I'm Head of Sales Development here at Foresight, and I'm going to be your host today for the Foresight Enterprise and Foresight VCT Shareholder Day. So a warm welcome to everybody online and here today in person. Just a couple of housekeeping bits. We're not expecting a fire alarm today, so if the fire alarm does go off, please just listen to our fire safety marshals and they'll help you exit the building safely and tell you what to do. And secondly, although this is a shareholder reporting day principally, our friends at the regulator believe that this is also a financial promotion. So we have to share with you this risk warning and disclaimer and really highlight that investing into small companies does obviously carry a high degree of risk. So on to the main event for you today. We've got a very packed agenda, as you can see, which I hope you'll both enjoy and you'll find beneficial, especially when it comes to tracking the progress of your investment into our growth VCTs. We're going to hear directly from some of the founders and managing directors of our existing and most promising portfolio companies. So a warm welcome to Anna McCarthy of KSL, Tom Redman from Evolve Dynamics. Are we going to get a live demo of the drone, perhaps? And also Stephen Pickett from Live Group Holdings. So a warm welcome to our guest speakers. This should take around an hour and a quarter or so. And then we're going to have a short comfort and refreshment break before we return to hear directly from my colleague, Hugh Minnock, who's the lead investment director for Foresight Enterprise and Foresight VCT. And he's going to give you a little bit of an insight into both the investment strategy, how we go about originating new companies for the portfolio, some of our key USPs, what's in the secret sauce, and most importantly, updating you on some of the excellent performance that the VCTs have experienced this year. At the end, we'll then finish with a short Q&A session where you'll be able to ask questions of Hugh and some of our speakers. And I'm also very glad to announce that we've got a number of the board members from both VCTs that are here today. So they'll be able to network with you later. But also the chairs of both boards, Margaret Littlejohns and Michael Gray, have agreed to sit in with some of our Q&A at the end. So please have your questions ready. For those of you who are online, you're able to submit questions through the chat function through Zoom. We'll close this off when it gets to the interval. So if you do have any questions, please submit those early so the team can collate them. And then for those of you who are here in the Shard, we'll finish with some sort of afternoon tea where you'll be able to network and continue chatting to some of the team. So before we kick off for the main event, I just thought I'd give you a short update on Foresight Group as a whole and through a slightly wider lens than some of the VCTs that we're here to talk about today, and just bringing your attention to a few key stats. So in summary, the business is in very good health. It's in excellent health. It continues to grow. We are now sort of over 18 offices globally, mostly in the UK and Northern Europe, but we have colleagues in as far-flung places as Australia. We have a growing headcount of sort of in excess of 500 people. And from that group, we have some of the largest direct investment teams within our respective disciplines. We've got over 110 infrastructure investment professionals managing over £10 billion worth of assets over 300 different institutional grade infrastructure assets. And this is things such as large-scale solar, large-scale wind projects, hydro, and that's all sort of supporting Foresight's commitment to transitioning towards net zero and providing a solution to UK's energy commitment. Now, from those 300 assets, they produce in excess of 3 gigawatts of electricity. Now, I won't ask you what a gigawatt is because I didn't know about it until last week, but apparently it can support more than 2 million homes. And that's the amount of energy that we're producing as a firm. And obviously that's something that we are extremely proud of. In conjunction with this infrastructure expertise, we also have one of the largest small and mid-cap private equity teams. in the UK, with almost 60 investment professionals that are managing 13 regional pension funds up and down the UK, along with the VCTs that you are directly invested in. And most pertinently, and just to bring your attention to our continued AUM growth, even with the challenging political and economic headwinds, or I probably should use the word turmoil, shouldn't I? It's utter chaos over the last few months. We continued to grow our AUM, and it's increased by over £1 billion since we sat down last year. And this has been partly through a process of acquisition. Our colleagues at Foresight Capital Management acquired Web Group last year, but it's also through some very strong fundraising in the retail tax efficient space and organic growth that's delivered. And we've gathered over £600 million worth of assets over the last 12 months. And this is from retail investors such as yourself into our core tax planning products, such as the VCTs that you're already invested into, but also our flagship inheritance tax business. And that's a significant milestone, which we are extremely proud of. Now, just putting this into context for the Foresight Enterprise and Foresight VCTs themselves, they raised their £60 million allocation in December in a little under 2 weeks, okay, which is a record for Foresight. And this investor demand is actually a real testimony to the skill of the private equity team in both setting and then executing upon the strategy in order to deliver some of the fantastic results, performance, which you're all going to hear about today and which we're going to share with you today. So that's enough from me. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Anna McCartney of KSL, who's going to kick us off. Anna, welcome to the stage.
Hi, everyone. My name's Anna McCartney. I am the Managing Director at KSL Clinic. A little bit about KSL Clinic and what we do. Primarily, we offer hair transplant services as our core business, specialising in FUE hair transplants, which stands for follicular unit extraction. We also specialise in hair restorative services, which are PRP, plasma-rich platelet treatments, and laser therapy. There's two things I really love about this industry and this business. The first one is how simple the business model is. It has really high volume in terms of surgeries due to the market demand, which in turn delivers really high average transaction values and margins. But also there's the human element of what it is that we do. We actually do change people's lives. You can see just from the patients we have here, we've got Luke, Tom and Lucy. Luke got his treatment in the last 12 months. His after picture is actually after 6 months. Tom's is after 12 months, and Lucy at the bottom here is after 2 years. And I'm sure you can agree, not only are we transforming their hairlines, offering them a rich, denser hairline, but we're also changing their lives. And I think you can see that from the smiles on their face on the after picture versus the before picture. And we've definitely tried to highlight that in our mission, vision, and values. You know, with our mission, you know, we are a dedicated team of healthcare professionals. We're committed to transforming people's lives to realise their true selves. And within our vision, you know, we aim to become the leading healthcare provider for hair loss treatments. By FY27, we will grow to a 12 million turnover business and a 5 million EBITDA. And by which point we will actually have treated just under 9,000 patients. Moving from a founder-led business to PE-backed corporate business, it was really important when I joined this business to introduce core values. This was to ensure that we were pushing for a set of behaviours, being a patient-centric business on this trajectory of growth, that we encouraged a set of behaviours that truly amplified what it is that we do, and that's to look after the end-to-end patient journey. Our story began back in 2016. The KSL was founded by a guy called Lloyd Hume, with the first clinic opening in Maidstone in Kent. By 2018, the second clinic was opened, which is in Manchester, northwest UK, along with some consultation hubs in Birmingham, Newcastle and Cardiff. The Maidstone clinic has 3 surgical rooms and 1 PRP treatment room, and the Manchester clinic at that point had 2 surgical rooms and 1 PRP treatment room. At this point, from 2018 up until 2023, the business was performing around 60 to 70 surgeries at peak per month. And it was at this point that Lloyd, the previous founder, decided he can't grow the business any further without additional help. He couldn't do it on his own. So in 2023, the business was backed by Foresight. After which, in 2024, a new senior management team, including myself, was introduced. And in the same year, in the last 12 months, we've definitely completed quite significant milestones. We've introduced finance through Tabio. We've launched a new consultation hub in central London. We have also expanded our Manchester clinic, which is now a 4 surgical room clinic. And we achieved 100 plus surgeries in November and December 2024, a year ahead of our schedule. That trajectory is definitely extended into early part of 2025. In January and February, we achieved another 200 surgeries. We've also opened a brand new surgical clinic in Dublin. So we now have 3 surgical clinics and 4 consultation hubs. We've also, early 2025, done a complete system integration. So we've migrated from our old infrastructure, which is quite archaic, to a system that is fit for purpose for a business that is ready for scalability. So a little bit about the industry then, the problem that exists and the solution that we're trying to provide for. In terms of the market demand, some stats here, 85% of men and 33% of women will at some point face hair loss. Male pattern baldness, which is also called androgenetic alopecia, makes up around 95% of male hair loss causes. And men will have varying degrees of hair loss by the age of 35. In fact, the youngest demographic age that we tend to see starts from the age of 25. So it's 25 to 45, predominantly our client base. But within the industry, there are some concerns, and they are the inconsistent quality of treatment delivery. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of providers within this market act like brokers. And what I mean by that is the brands that you inquire with is not necessarily the place where you go and have your surgery, nor are the doctors working for that brand. So you can make an inquiry at Harley Hair clinics, and you can book in for a procedure after being sold your hair transplant, but then you don't know at the point of booking where your transplant's going to be or who your surgeon's going to be. So obviously we're here to try and find a solution to that. On top of that, there are also varying pricing models, and that causes confusion for a lot of patients. For example, some people, it's not a disruptive market by any means, but there are low pricing out there. But when you dig a little deeper, it's the way in which those providers are pricing for hair transplant services. So, for example, you could get a procedure for £2,500, but that's based on a certain number of grafts. And by grafts, that's the hair follicle that is implanted into the area of concern. So on the day of the surgery, it could turn out, once your head is shaven, that you actually need 500, maybe even 1,000 more grafts than what you've paid for. What do you get? The number of grafts that you've paid for, which results in a lot of dissatisfied patients. So here at KSL, what we do is we offer specialised treatment protocols. We only specialise in FUE technology, and that is follicular unit extraction, versus FUT. FUT is where you take a section of the actual scalp, remove it, and then place it in the area of concern, which can lead to linear scarring. So our technique is a lot less invasive for the patient and protects the donor area. Our doctors are also trained in a technique that is exclusive to KSL, trademarked by our medical director, Dr. Matty. It's called the MinSim technique. It's minimally invasive. It's a simplistic technique, and we basically use the smallest punch with regards to our incisions, which allows for a more denser hair transplant, but also a more realistic and less. You wouldn't be able to tell that you would have had a hair transplant from the technique that we are using. We also have a core treatment focus. A lot of other providers also operate in cosmetic surgery, maybe some aesthetics. We specialise in what we are good at, and that is hair transplants and hair restorative services. Then patient-centred approach. So we own, unlike the broker model I talked about earlier, we own the end-to-end patient journey from the point in which you inquire to the day of your surgery, and your 12 months and longer post-surgery care. You are dealing with someone from KSL clinics. The procedure that you have, because of the way in which we train our doctors, no matter who you have your surgery with, whether it's a doctor with a really good profile on social media or not, you are going to get exactly the same level of results, the exactly same patient care. And therefore, there is no kind of rock star doctor element to our business. The brand is bigger than the doctors that work for us. And then we have transparent pricing. So we have fixed pricing, and we fix our pricing based on the area to be treated. So there are areas called 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That depends on whether it's hairline or hairline and crown. And it is fixed pricing. So on the day of surgery, we will try safely and ethically to do so, to remove as many of the grafts from the donor site as possible and implant them into the area of concern. Regardless of how much you paid, we will put the maximum amount of grafts that is safe to do so, given the best possible patient outcome. As well as that, the donor area is protected, unlike other methods, and we also guarantee our results. So if you don't get 80% regrowth in the area that we've transplanted, we will do the procedure again for free. In terms of financial performance, this is the last 12 months, April to March in 25. We've seen year-on-year growth in all of our main financial metrics, 27% growth in revenue, 59% gross margin achieved, which was a 2% year-on-year growth. That could be better, but I'll come on to that in a second. A 5.2 million revenue in the last 12 months, and that is despite our April to June ramp-up period. And that materialised into 918k of EBITDA, which was a 20% growth year on year. Just to point out there, when I first joined the business back in April 2024, the business was 27% behind. So to have achieved the positive growth, it all came out of H2 of 2024, leading into the first 3 months of 2025. And again, just to add, in terms of the last 3 years comparison, you can see again, just from the from July pointer there, the green is 2024 to 2025. You can see the marked improvement in surgery volume that we have seen, not just beating year-on-year growth, but also 2022 to 2023, which is when the business was sold. And in terms of where we're going, so our revenue forecast, we will realise 6 million of revenue by FY25, leading to 10 to 12 million by FY27. So in terms of a commercial update then, as I mentioned before, we've opened new locations. So we've got 1 additional surgical clinic and 2 hubs opened. We have additional doctors. We started off with 2 doctors and 1 PRP nurse. We've now got 4 doctors and 2 PRP nurses and the medical team, which has really helped us significantly increase our capacity. We've also introduced key partnerships, which is a B2B referral partnership scheme. This is where we network and build relationships with health clubs and barbers, and anywhere where our patients are live, work, and play. We try and build relationships with those providers, and they are actively promoting KSL with their own customers. In return, if any of their customers come to us as a patient for a transplant, they will receive a referral fee for that. KPI sales funnel and service measurements have all been introduced in the last 12 months. We've introduced a KPI for every single aspect of the sales funnel, which has allowed me to monitor both conversion and leakage in order to improve the performance. We've also aligned our bonus structure with those KPIs as well. So we bonus now on the areas of concern rather than the areas that we're already performing in. And we've also, in the last 12 months, achieved a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. So it was one of my biggest focuses when I came in, to not only improve the volume of reviews that we were seeing, but to also to improve the 5-star rating. In H2, I've mentioned this earlier, so in 2024, the H2 recovery period, we were 24% downturn in revenue. After the 90-day ramp-up periods from July onwards, we've seen year-on-year growth every single month since that period. So in the actual year, January to December 24, we were 6% ahead by year end. And then we had our record-breaking peak season. Not only did we achieve 100 surgeries in 1 month, we actually achieved it in November and December, and then a continuing 2 months leading into 2025. So since we've been backed by Foresight, some post-investment highlights are we've had an infrastructure improvement, so the system upgrades across all locations is allowing us to future-proof the business for scalability. We introduced finance as well. We've also had, our aim is to definitely hire tall and get the best in class working for KSL. So our talent acquisition strategy is definitely aligned with the growth strategy within the business. Market expansion, so we've entered into new regional markets in Dublin and Ireland. At the moment, we are only performing consultations. Our surgeries start at the end of this month. And we've achieved our record-breaking surgery volume. So our growth strategy is quite a simple one. It starts here at the bottom of this pyramid with fixing the back ends of the business. This is all about increasing capacity, which we've done with the introduction of 2 new doctors. We've also done that with diary management and making sure we're stretching our capacity as much as we possibly can. So we're in a situation now where at peak we know we can get 65 surgeries out of Kent, 80 surgeries out of Manchester, and with our new addition in Dublin, that will allow us to deliver another 20 to 30 surgeries per month. We've also done a slight restructure within some key roles within the organisation, and we're constantly upskilling the team. And one of the other emphasis in terms of laying these foundations for growth is the rephasing and restructuring of our medical director's remuneration package, which will massively have an impact on the gross margin I mentioned earlier. We're achieving between 50 and 59%. At the moment, we want that to be at least starting with a 7, so we want 70% minimum gross margin moving forward, which for a healthcare provider is unheard of. So we'll definitely again be breaking records there if we can not just achieve that but sustain it moving forwards. And the next level, once we've fixed the back ends of the business and we've got the capacity there to book surgeries in, is to keep managing and monitoring our service and sales funnel. The KPI and analytics continue to evolve. We can improve performance by having this intel in the business. The next steps to that is actually the introduction of AI and automations. We've this week just completed the automations project, and we're now in discussions with an AI company of how we can introduce artificial intelligence into our patient journey. This will be handling inbounds, maybe handling outbound calls, which stops us from recruiting more resource every time our inquiries goes up, and just to be a more efficient business, hopefully without compromising our 5-star service is the true aim. Geographical expansion, obviously we've got Ireland Clinic open now. Our next challenge is getting this to 30 surgeries per month. We've opened our London hub, and we will continue to add additional locations using our postcodes analysis moving forwards. Our consultation hubs act like feeder clinics into our surgical centres. That will allow us to obviously gain market leadership, have a dominant position as the leading healthcare provider for hair loss and restorative services. We will achieve 150 surgeries by this point, a 70% GP and a 40% drop to EBITDA, which is 5 million by FY27. So our roadmap then for this expansion is quite simple. I said this at the start of the presentation. One thing I love about this business model is how simple it is. And in 3 steps, there are several initiatives that we're going to be working on from now up until FY27 to achieve our end goal. The first one, as I mentioned, increased capacity to achieve 150 surgeries. We've opened Ireland, we've expanded Manchester, and we've optimised our Kent facility to support the goal of achieving 150 surgeries. We'll also continue to expand our hubs so that we get maximum market reach. The second step is the improvement of the front end of the business with the service and sales funnel management. The first part of this is managing the KPIs, a lot of people management to drive sustainable revenue growth. But also the second part of this is to continue to improve inquiries through lead generation. Our inquiries over the past 12 months have doubled in size, and to prevent a bottleneck in those inquiries, we've had to hire people. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we want to introduce AI and automations effectively within the business, without having to constantly add headcount, compromising our EBITDA. And then the last step is improve our gross margin. So if we simply change our remuneration package for our our medical director, Dr. Massey, we will be able to improve our surgical GP to 70%, which allows us to realise the 40% drop from revenue to EBITDA. Again, it prepares the business for a successful exit, and an enhanced enterprise value. Thank you. I think Tom's up next.
Firstly, thanks very much for having me, and really interesting to hear about your business as well. Very inspiring, tough act to follow. So I'm Tom Redman. I am the CEO of Evolve Dynamics. So we are making unmanned air systems. So you're looking at one. It's always easier to show rather than just talk about it. So uncrewed aerial systems, we're focused on helping users gather the critical intelligence they need to do their jobs better. It's a dual-use product. That means it can be used by the military for doing intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. It can be used whether you're an emergency responder trying to formulate what should the response be when you're on site, whether you're in infrastructure inspection, particularly critical national infrastructure, nuclear stations, railway infrastructure, that type of thing. And when you think about the use of drones, it's been exponential in the use cases that have grown. But in the use case that we're focused on, Evolve Dynamics, in emergency responders and in military, operational availability is top of mind. So one of the things that we focused on right from the start of the inception of the business is being a tough, rugged, resilient drone is built for British weather. So it doesn't matter if it's windy, it's raining, you need to be in the sky. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail about some of our products, but the one that you're looking at on the table is called the Sky Mantis. It's about 8 kilograms. You can put it on your backpack, and have it on your back, but realistically, we see users have this on a vehicle, and it's an asset where multiple users can have access and share it. And on that vehicle, you get to the area that you want to get some intelligence about, and you can deploy it very quickly within 90 seconds. And the amount of times we've turned up to demonstrations, to active exercises with customers, or been part of trialing with Network Rail, for example, looking up and down the railways to clear for intruders, and we're the only drone that can fly. And that is really, really important, maximizing that the deployment. So it's wind, it's rain, it's also weather conditions. So we have a thermal chamber. We're based in Hampshire, and so we invested quite early in putting the right technology in place to put our technology through the right hoops. So we've got one of our systems with the Royal Navy on the HMS Protector. It's one of our early customers. This has been used. They've got 2 Sky Mantis, and they help in Antarctic expeditions look and map out ice flows in advance. And we can see the logs when they come in for servicing with us. And what we can see is that they use these a huge amount. And so we're into the 3rd and 4th year of these systems, and they're just keeping going in these sub Antarctic conditions. We've also had inspection going on out in the Middle East, looking at oil and gas infrastructure in Oman. But we've also had what was hugely sort of a big catalyst for growth for the company back into 2023. We sent a bunch of systems to Ukraine for intelligence gathering. And this was transformational for the company, also hugely challenging because it highlighted a lot of lessons that are being learned by manufacturers of uncrewed aerial systems all over the world that realized the technology that they thought was bleeding edge was actually easily defeated when you had radio jamming, when you had GPS jamming. So resilience takes on a different meaning when you want to have your uninterrupted operations with communication and navigation. So GPS is conventionally the way that you would be navigating. It's how the drone knows where it is. But if you're in an environment and you're an emergency responder or you're a military individual, what you're going to come up against is an adversary that knows how to jam GPS or spoof GPS. So you confuse the drone, it doesn't know where it is, goes into a field, or worse, they get hold of it and then can start looking at the data or those assets. So what we found about 18 months ago is a big technological challenge to figure out how you deal with that type of challenge. What you need to do is to be able to use an alternative GPS navigation system. And so we use a visual based, so it can look at the terrain and know where it is and return home or return to a predefined location. And we found 18 months ago this was extremely expensive and hard thing to integrate into the system, but this is such a rapid and innovative field that the number of partners and manufacturers that are focusing just on this technology in the field has grown hugely. The price has come down, so we're able to test with our users in Ukraine, out in Hampshire, a number of different systems and constantly iterate on this technology. The radio is another key aspect. So some of our drones turned up on what's called a single band frequency, and it's how a ground control station that you're looking at to press buttons to move around talks to the drone, and you can jam a single band radio frequency quite easily, and the Russians are very good at doing this. So you need a enhanced radio that frequency hops. It realizes when it's being jammed and it switches to a different frequency without losing having interruption in your flight. So we put in an awful lot of work to testing different radio manufacturers and integrating different radios. It's very complicated once you take apart a radio and try and integrate it in terms of interference into a system like this. And so we've had a lot of challenges on how we do this. We've worked with the Home Office and the Border Force, so they wanted a very specific radio, and that's become almost a specialization in having resilient radio comms. And our tether is a huge piece of British engineering that we're very proud of. So you can essentially put our drone on a string, and it takes the flight time. This will fly for about 1 hour to about 48 hours without stopping. It's a persistent overwatch. The power goes up and down the line, but also the data goes up and down the line. So you're not emitting radio frequency, you're silent. And what we're proud of as well is that you can drop our tether mid-flight and carry on and pursue a target of interest without landing the drone. We don't know anyone globally who's doing that. So the tether is a real challenge technologically that we focused on cracking. And lastly, autonomy is a huge area that's come into the drone world. And what you need in order to have autonomous aspects of how you do your operations, firstly, you need to have onboard compute. So we've focused on I'm going to talk to you about the Sky Mantis, but some of our new drones, which I'm excited to talk about as well. And we focused on laying the groundwork so they have the onboard compute to do things like object detection and classification. It's extremely hard when you're in the field, lots is going on. There's a time bound, there's a very short window you need to actually gather information and formulate a response. It's a reasonably small screen. It's very challenging to spot if there's somebody hiding behind the bushes. So using AI to actually detect if it's a person or a vehicle, the location, and feeding different models into that in terms of the libraries so that you're detecting the right type of assets. That's been one of our big focuses, and we support that now on our new products. Navigation, so being able to, a lot of our users will want to have a perimeter that they are set up to monitor. So we focused on giving them the ability to predefine a mission, and is completely hands-off at that point. It's just flying the mission. You can just look or even send the feedback to a command center and decide what to do with that information. And last bit of tech is our radar technology. So I mentioned we work with the Royal Navy and with the Home Office, and what it became clear with those users is quite challenging when you're launching and landing on a boat which moves. That's the time when something goes wrong and you hit the deck. So we focus. There is the common way of solving this problem is you put a QR code on the vessel, and there will be an automatic land. But this doesn't work if you've got poor weather. So it's back to our sort of guiding principle of like, no matter the weather. So we've worked with a Cambridge-based radar company and integrated some radars into the Sky Mantis and to the deck, and it essentially creates a cone, so you're hands-off on the land, the launch, and the loiter. And that's now having interesting use cases in terms of following a vehicle as well, and all sorts of other applications. The Sky Mantis is 8 kilograms. What we're proud about with this system is so what you're looking at here is called a gimbal. And so we, rather than buy the whole gimbal, we integrate sensors. So it's got 2 sensors on our standard payload, one for looking at day, one for looking at night. You can hot swap this and do 7 different types of mission, which is pretty unique. So you can do some geolocation if you're looking to find a device, if you're a search and rescue. We've got some pretty complex thermal imagery that the Polish Fire Brigade are using. And then we've got some advanced high-resolution imagery, which inspection customers look at. For example, in Ukraine, if there's been damage to a dam, one of our users, they will go and take a load of video with a 61 megapixel payload, and then they'll use software to analyze whether there's been cracks as a result and whether they need to go in and fix something. So it's extremely versatile. We are dual use. So we're focusing on our defense users, gathering critical situational awareness. There's a big security focus. We've worked with about 14 different police constabularies in the UK. We're seeing a huge push in that area for the drone as a first responder concept. So your first eyes on any emergency situation is a drone, and it's immediately giving you that telemetry and the video feed back to a command center so you can formulate your response, and the fire service as well, which is picking up in Poland, as I mentioned. And then from an inspection basis, we've been doing some work with Network Rail. We've had some interest from Northern Power Grid around how do you actually do the power grid inspection, and the linesman, rather than going up on a ladder, can pop a small drone, more to come on that in a minute, up and have a look. So we've worked with a number of police customers. We've been in trials and experimentation phase with a lot of the British forces, and we're really looking to move that into the next phase where we get on to major programs of record. And I'll talk about that in the growth strategy in a minute. We've had fire, search and rescue, and border protection seems to be becoming of interest. We're now expanding out to the other side of the channel with the French and the Belgians, and Cyprus MOD have also taken on board our systems. We design, develop, deliver everything in the UK, so that's really important to us. But we have 15 people, employees who are based in Ukraine. We've got a legal entity in Ukraine. It's an important part of our DNA. They've been with us as some of our earliest employees, and they're integrated into every single function. And what that gives us is access to the front line. We get to see what works and what doesn't. And on a daily basis, we'll send new radio technology, we'll send new sensors to integrate, and we'll say, does it work? And go and test it with real users. It's hugely valuable. It's very challenging running a roadmap like that. We have almost a weekly basis to say, great idea, can we park that one until the next sprint review? The Sky Mantis 2, a lot of the feedback we have from this, love the versatility and the range that you can get on the payloads, but it's a bit too big. Spoke to over 100 users last year, did a big market survey, and the biggest thing that came out was your current system is a bit too big. It hurts my shoulders when you've got it on the back. It's not agile enough. And so we have launched a new system yesterday, actually, called the Wolf. It's named after General James Wolfe, if you're familiar. He was famous for his military strategist in Quebec. And he was known for his tactics at night in particular. So one of the big pieces of feedback we get is often you're needing to do a mission in darkness. So I don't want something that is large and has a bigger chance of getting detected. So we've gone half the size with the Wolf. It's extremely intelligent with all the features that I mentioned, packed into a small package, and it's the same flight time of an hour. I've also brought with me the Fox, who's hiding. So the Fox is named after Luke Fox, who's a British Arctic explorer. This is less than 250 grams, so you can fit this in your pouch. This means it's also in a regulatory category where you don't need a GBC license to fly it, and it's extremely easy to upskill. The biggest challenge that our users told us that they had once they had a system in their hands was the weather. That came out loud and clear. So this is market leading in terms of the weather resilience. There's a platform called the Black Hornet 4. It's about half the size of this, which is one of the largest competitors in the types of customers that we're looking at in this space. And the big problem is you get a gust of wind, you are not going to be operational. But the second one was training. You have users in emergency responders and military and inspection who will move on every year, 18 months at best. And then you've got a new user. You do not want to have to train that user from scratch. So the upskill time on this is a couple of hours. I can fly it, which is saying something. It's also got a frequency hopping radio at the front. It's nice and foldable. The battery clicks in at the bottom. So you've got instant ISR in a 1 to 2 kilometer bubble, literally in your pocket. I think you've heard enough about me. I've been involved in some of the interesting British high growth technology businesses. I felt like I needed a new challenge, so I picked making things that fly and selling to defense and security users with these insanely complex procurement frameworks. We brought on recently, about 4 months ago, our Chief Growth Officer who spent 12 years selling drones at Kinetic. And we've got our Chief Operating Officer who spent some time at Ocado, Lego and TAG Aviation, who specialises on robotics and automation in particular. So we've got the right team. Some of what we've been focusing on in terms of a commercial update. So 2024 has been extremely challenging in terms of selling to the UK MOD. There was an election and it triggered a strategic defence review. It's a really comprehensive look at how the British forces are structured and how the MOD works, particularly with UK SMEs. And so they still haven't brought it out. I think it was a spring promise, and definitely the daffodils are out, but it's due apparently next week or the week after, according to the latest from the Defence Secretary. But the only things really that have been released in advance are that drones are going to be absolutely critical to how the British Army and the British forces in general are going to adapt their next wave of technology. As I said, there's a huge push by the emergency responders, particularly the police in the UK, to develop their drone as a first responder market. And what we're looking to do, and we've been doing this in advance, is really working with those users, joining them on exercises both domestically and abroad, and giving them the kit and getting the feedback, integrating into their common operating systems. We have our first, so what that meant is in 2024, we were actually, as a British business, exporting a lot. So we sold into Australia, to Japan, to Canada, to Poland, to Indonesia, to name a few. So we're now in the phase of delivering on those contracts and in an expansion discussion to expand those key strategic accounts. We spent the time being really clear on what's the user, what's the mission. I think my business development team are bored of me saying that. What's the user? What's the mission? This can do 7 different mission types. And so once you understand what the user is trying to do with our drone, is much easier to scale, and having those 7 is unique positioning. As I mentioned, we've gone smaller. And so the miniaturized drones, we'd done some work laying the groundwork for the Fox a couple of years ago. And then when we were delivering the Sky Mantis to Ukraine, we realized that all of these lessons, there's no way we can launch in its current form unless we take those lessons on board in terms of the resilience, in terms of the onboard autonomy. But in terms of the latest iteration of the Wolf and the Fox, it was 3 or 4 months. Extremely rapid going. I was absolutely amazed to see us go from here's the concept. And I think we've had a head start because we've got some of the electronics and the flight software. It's easier to make a new type of drone once you've made one drone. But it really is rapid now in terms of how we can come to market. We've been working particularly with the UK Border Force and the MOD Police. What they like to do is from the MOD Police side, they've got 15 or 20 different sites which they're responsible for monitoring in the UK. They've bought one, now they've bought two, and we're now in discussions around a complete rollout across their whole estate. These are the types of strategic account growth that we're really focusing on going forward. And our headcounts are with more than 50 people now. We've got a cross-functional engineering team. We support the operations, we support the delivery, and as I said, we've got about 15 of those in Ukraine. Our retention is something I'm very proud of. I think we went an entire year without one leaver. People do not want to leave when you're building drones and you're selling to make the world a safer place. It's a nice place to work, and I see a lot of energized people. In terms of our growth strategy, so I've talked a little bit more about converting some of those early trials into long-term strategic partners, and I'm getting our business development team really focused on what are the 3 or 4. They've done the try. Now let's get into an expansion and a buy, and what does that look like? And focusing on that stakeholder influencing. Unlike the previous business that we talked about, this is not a consumer business, and it does require that proper stakeholder management. It does require you to understand what's the framework that they want to buy under, what is the strategic problem they're looking to solve, and to work that from a senior decision maker top down, and work with the users to make sure that they're supportive and sending the right buying signals up. And so we're really focused on getting this right. Our big focus now is the geopolitical landscape. I think is support. It's a good place to be if you're a UK defence based and dual use SME, making drones. In terms of the Venn diagram of all the things that there's a lot of focus on at the moment, we're deep purple in the middle, and so we are very well placed to displace some of our competitors, particularly in the US, when it comes to domestic programs being rolled out. And I'm not just talking about the US, I'm talking about NATO allied nations. We're seeing those types of requirements come out now where they want an EU or a UK solution to the problem. They definitely don't want Chinese, and they also don't want US because they want that sovereign standalone capability. One of the other points I would like to call out is partnership with the so-called primes. If you're not familiar with that term, working in this industry, there are a small number of very large, well-established defense companies that have got relationships at scale, and working alongside and in collaboration with primes definitely is an area that we're looking to focus on a little bit more, whether that is through software and AI. We support and we could focus all of our time on making the user interface and the algorithms and the AI as slick as possible. But there are other companies that just exist for this very purpose. It's actually extremely hard to make this type of product engineered from a hardware perspective, and to support that type of from a software perspective with the onboard compute. So we think there's a place for a partnership in that space. We're also getting approached around where do you integrate this into vehicles. It could be a ground vehicle, it could be a ship, it could be a small ship. And we want to identify 1 or 2 of those partners and get under a memorandum of understanding and start testing this technology this year. And lastly, focusing on export. So we think that we're hugely ambitious around putting the UK in the space where we can lead on drone technology. There's been a huge gap to Chinese drones. DJI and Autel, the 2 companies, have 70% of market share, which is just it's huge in terms of the stranglehold. And what that means is the capability, of course, with that type of mass is very impressive, but the price point has been so suppressed. But the users that we're talking about, they do not want Chinese drones. And so we're positioning ourselves as the best of the West. And in terms of a combination of capability and price, we can really become a major exporter in the Baltics, in the Nordics, and with Poland and Germany. So those are the discussions that we're having at the moment. And lastly, so Foresight have had a large impact in terms of our board leadership. So we brought on Hugh. He's here, so I have to say nice things about him. Who's actually extremely educated on this sector, which is it's somewhat specialist in terms of how to navigate, and he brings previous experience, which has been hugely valuable in guidance and from a strategic perspective. We've also brought on board a chairman, Victor Chavez, who used to be the CEO at Thales, one of the so-called primes, and also has a number of other drone executive roles. So that type of leadership really has transformed from the top down how we think about our strategy, how we think about managing operational gearing. So we focused really on accelerating how we engage with customers and the journey that we want to go through with those customers, having a plan to get on those large programs of records, which is a team game. You don't hunt a whale or hunt an elephant, whatever your animal of choice is, by yourself. You need to have a team. You need to be coordinated on how you approach this market, and it's really helped us having that type of leadership in the way we think about that. We've also tightened up the belt, better cost control focused. We've been more focused on managing our operational gearing and our headcount and how much we spend in R&D in between some of these deals, which can be unpredictable when you've got a strategic defence review, which freezes domestic spend, for example. And lastly, we've elevated the reporting and governance, so regular board reporting, and it's also cascaded within our management team, has created a better alignment, I think a better incentivization on, what are we doing as a business. I think that wraps me up. I have no idea how I did with time. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, Tom. So my name is Stephen Pickett. I'm with Live Group. We're an events and communication agency. What we do is we tailor events to individuals. And so if you look at an event like today, you have a multitude of people that are here. You have some people that are online, and everybody learns differently. Everybody wants to consume their content and their knowledge differently. But we put everybody in one room and assume everybody's going to consume their content differently. Well, we've really cracked the code on how to make sure that we can engage individuals, whether online or in person, in a way that's unique to each of you to ensure that our client's message resonates more with them. So generic communications is not the way to go anymore. You need to individualize your communications for your audience and who you're speaking with. So how have we done that? So Live Group, you'll see on the far left, we've been in business for 50 years. This is our 50th anniversary right now. Quite excited about that. It provides us a lot of opportunity to share with our clients the level of competitiveness that we have in the marketplace. We've actually gone to the government to certify that we are, in fact, the oldest continuous in business agency in the UK. So that's quite something to be able to go to our clients and be able to speak to that. The knowledge, the insights, and the ability to be agile through many markets has really helped support some of the clients that I'm going to share with you that we work with. I'll talk a little bit later about the impact that Foresight has had with us, but part of that has been in the launch of Invoku. And that's part of our plan to ensure that we're understanding technology that much more in relation to an event and how to ensure that we're going out to individualize those experiences. So I'm sure at some point, maybe some of you have been to an event similar to this. You've maybe had to go and complete badging. You've then been given an app or somewhere where you can sign up and be able to say, I want to go to this breakout room. I want to see you attend this speaker, all those sorts of things. But that's so generic for everybody. Doesn't matter what your cultural impact is. Doesn't matter what your age is, what your profession is. They're sticking everybody into a room. And so what we've done is with Invoku, we've really started to crack the code of understanding how you are as individuals. So how do we do that? Audience DNA. And I would encourage all of you to actually go to audiencedna.com, take 90 seconds, complete the survey, and it will then inform you more about your personality type in relation to content and how you like to consume your content. When you do that, now we're going to feed that information into Invoku. We're going to then be able to ensure that what you see for the content that you're going to be getting is going to be delivered to you in a way that suits to your personality. So if some of you in time have done things like Myers-Briggs, 16 different personality profiles, that sort of thing, it's similar to that in how it's based, but it allows us to understand more onto your individual. Do you want to be up here and hearing what I'm saying? Would you rather be in a small group setting with a breakout room and having conversations with me in a Q&A? All these things matter when you're trying to get a message out to your audience. So being able to be one of the only agencies that actually has our own tech that then personalizes that tech to the individual person that's going there is a powerful message when we're talking to our clients and prospective clients about how we can really intelligently accelerate the understanding of their message, which is key for us. So how do we do that? Part of the reason and part of the way that we go to market is to talk about ensuring headcount stays. So Tom had mentioned not a lot of people have left his business. What's key about that is you don't have the brain drain. Recruitment costs are going to be able to be maintained. You have a lot more clients that are happy if they're engaging with the same people over, and you're able to build those types of relationships. So what we've found is that the average company spends just over £1,000 a year to communicate effectively to their team members. But it costs each company £5,000 in miscommunication to not communicate with their team members because of the reasons I mentioned. And so that 4,000 approximate delta is where we play per employee to say to them, you need to communicate more effectively to your employees. You need to ensure that you're getting your message out to them because it's going to save you not just in making sure your message gets heard and understood, but that your team has clarity and purpose in what it is that they're working towards. So that Tom can come up here and say, this is what we are, this is what we're about. And now he's able to bring his costs down. So it's really key for us. So the services that we offer, your audience insights, as I mentioned to you. So there's some insights there that we're getting about noise going on. The insights. So when you look at who your audience is, not only does it allow us to personalize to you, but we're able to make those marginal gains in how you communicate to your audience to then be able to ensure, as I said earlier, that your message is resonating properly. Not just the standard demographics of age, position, or anything else, but you're also able to get to that next level of personality. And then you get into the marketing side of what that can look like. Events being reimagined, how do you do it differently rather than just have somebody on a stage in front of a screen speaking to people? What are the ways that you can have that message resonate differently with people? Creativity is always key in how you go to solve for your problems. And that digital ecosystem that I spoke about before is key to bringing that all together. And then you get into the traditional ways of being able to put an event on. Two areas that we really focus on is the data and what kind of information are we giving to our clients. It's not just to say, hey, you went to this event. Was the coffee hot? Was the food good? Did you find parking okay? That's what you get before. And then after you've done the event, how is the food? How is the coffee? Did you get to parking okay? That's not giving you any insight to say the £500,000, £4 million that you've spent on an event, was that worthwhile? Has that helped? But by understanding the audience, we can then track what they're doing, where they're going, what rooms are they attending in, what are they interacting with, to now be able to say, yes, your message is getting out to the appropriate people and it's being heard. And then you get into sustainability. A lot of the things that we've done, you'll see a little bit later on our history, is we were one of the first organizations to actually do online events in the UK. So broadcasting out to people the way that we are currently now, allowing us to ensure, okay, if you have people, some people are more comfortable at home and don't want to come inside because they don't want to travel to London. They're not comfortable in the setting. They're not able to because schedule changing. You have such a neurodiverse audience out there. It would be foolish for us not to tap into the full potential of everybody, because what makes all of us different is what makes us better. And we need to grasp into that when we're communicating to our team members. And that's a key part for who we are when we go to market. So what's the challenge? The challenge is audience segmentation is very blob focused. It's everybody is as one, and it's just not working anymore. And then the personalization, okay, I can personalize it by saying, I'm going to give you a different colored badge. I can communicate with you a little bit differently for what we see on screen. But generally speaking, everything is static, and that is not working, especially when you see people coming from, some people are coming into the office, some people are not, some people are remote. You have teams that are truly global, and we're not reaching them. And so that opportunity to reach them is something that we've really tapped into. It becomes more about the communication and the content than the actual event of having some fireworks and some big video displays that are going out there. And with that, we've seen increased engagement. We've done an event for the last 14 years for the government finance function in the UK. And in the last 3 years, we've been using Audience DNA. And the amount of increase that they've had in engagement is over 44% in the last year, from February 2025 to February 2024. just by ensuring that we're communicating to members where they want to be communicated to. The example that I use, and depends on my audience. If I'm talking to somebody in Canada, I would obviously use a hockey analogy, but I'll use a football analogy here. He's going to want to go watch a football match at the pub because he's had a stressful day, and he's going to want to engage and see what's going on with everybody and have a pint or two. And then you're going to have Anna, who's going to want to do it at home, and she's going to want to just be with her family and watch the game online. And then myself, I'm going to want to go to a field. Yeah, I'm going to go to a field. Sorry, I'm not used to, is it a pit? No, pitch. There you go. Do you want to go to a pitch or not? I'm going to want to go to a pitch because I want to have that experience. The content of the football is fundamentally the same, but the way I'm consuming that data is specific to me so that I get the most out of that. And we are bringing that type of mindset to the corporate world and getting them to understand how you can reach the audiences to where they are, not where you want them to be. So our expertise, as I mentioned a little bit before, the creative, the audience DNA in Voku, and the content, really focusing on what is the message you want to deliver. If we understand that, then we can pick venues, then we can pick AV, then we can end up picking up who your speakers, what is it you want to do. We were doing an event for an organization in The Hague a couple months ago, and they ended up wanting to bring Amal Clooney as one of their speakers. And so they looked at the audience they were going for, and they decided, you know what, we actually want to bring Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, as the speaker. But when they found out that his ticket price was £3.5 million for 90 minutes, they ended up pulling back a little bit. But they're trying to focus on who their audience is. How do you get the most out of what your spend is? And so that's where we look at the project management side and understanding what are your messages, what is that content, and how do we get that out to the right marketplace? And then stakeholder management is something that really gets underplayed. Budget management, how do you go after that? I'm working with one individual that is really keen on how they're going to present their event, their content, but they're not the final decision maker. It's a board, it's somebody at a higher level, and we need to ensure that they're taken care of because they're the ones that are going to be later on standing up on the stage and delivering what it is that we're going to be talking about. So who are some of our clients and why do they trust us? EY, S&P Global, PIMCO, full range of financial services, full range of accounting firms, law firms, areas where should we have the downturn of an economy at any time, these are the areas where money, communication, ensuring you get your message out is really key. Standard Chartered is one where we do a lot of work with their affluent business. Those are people where they want to ensure those smaller gatherings that they have for 15 or 20 people are really high level, really bespoke to them, to the ones where BDO is really keen to understand their partners and have smaller areas around the country where they like to have small gatherings at the Ivy. So they do them at small areas at Ivies around the country, but then they bring us in to help support on that. And so those are the things that when you look at where our areas of focus are, is ensuring where do we have those opportunities to grow and maintain a real presence within those industries. So historically, as I said, 50 years, which is quite exciting for us. In 2010, Toby Lewis ended up having a management buyout from Jonathan Lewis, who is his father. And so he came in 2010 and he launched the original app, which was called Hive. And that was really at the forefront of bringing more audience members into an event. So it wasn't just based on you had to physically be somewhere to be able to attend it. All the way up to December 2023 when we received the investment from Foresight. And then in 2024, this past year, when we were actually able to launch Voku, which I spoke about before, which is Hive reimagined and really personalizing it to the next level. And that's been a quite exciting time for us. The industry problem I talked about a little bit before. The really key, though, that I wanted to highlight a bit more on this is the generational divide. And when you look at the baby boomers versus Gen X and the people that are coming now into the office and the workplace, everybody has a different way that they want to communicate. And so we ensure that we go to that market and understand it, because you'd be surprised the number of people that generationally may not be the way that you think they are. As much as you may hear a lot in the news of people that are saying, I just want to work from home. I'm between 25 and 30. That's where I'm comfortable because I've never had to work in the office. We actually see the opposite in some respects too, where that generation is actually wanting the experience to be in the office. So how do you ensure that you're communicating to both sides? And that's a key thing that we tap into. added into, as I mentioned before, the neurodiversity that we're seeing, a lot more people being comfortable talking about and creating that environment where people feel confident to really be their true authentic selves. So that's a big part of how we understand this is a challenge in the industry. How do we go to market with it? And that's a big part of what we're solving for. Commercial highlights, you'll see that one on the left, top left there. That was the event that we did in The Hague. What was really exciting about that one, it was the largest event that we've done in the history of the company, both in terms of scale and actual value. What was great about this is our founder was able to actually come up with the full creative that he wanted to, and what we pitched a year before was actually what we delivered a year later. So that's an actual picture, but basically what happened was that top area where the light's coming from was down on the stage. It actually raised up as a hood, still projecting on there, and then a guitarist ended up coming out to perform. So it was quite nice to be able to see that whole experience, and that was for Aviva, the industrial software company. So that was nice to be able to bring that to the forefront. And then in the bottom right, you'll see Singapore. So we opened an office in May of 2023 in Singapore, which is where we were able to secure a long-term contract with Standard Chartered. That's really provided a lot more opportunity for us now. We're getting into a lot more regional work within Bangkok, PIMCO, BDO, doing their regional offices and supporting them on there. So having that office has helped us support offices that we have in the UK where there might be a subsidiary in Singapore, as well as expanding into new clients that we don't have any presence in the UK and having a presence with them in Singapore, and then helping to cross-pollinate that over into the UK. Added into that, with the current 7-hour time difference, we're also able to provide support for both sides of our clients that much longer throughout the day. So now it's no longer 8 hours of support, it's 15 hours of support. So that ability to communicate more effectively and more timely and get things done quickly for clients is really key. Another highlight for us is BDO. We've just been awarded a 3-year, £18 million contract with them last week. That's going to be a single source sold, not only for venue sourcing, but also to use Audience DNA. The UK government was one of the first ones that actually used Audience DNA with us. We do Civil Service Live for them, which is coming up in June and July, which is a traveling roadshow where Kat Little goes out and speaks and talks to all the civil servants about what's going on. We've launched Audience DNA with that. And what's exciting about that is all 42,000 some odd members that are in attendance, we now have all their personality data based on who they are. So when the government wants to understand how do we communicate with the civil service, they're going to need to come with us and understand who that audience is. And so that's something that's really exciting for us. And then with Audience DNA, as I was mentioning, BDO, also all in on understanding that. What's really key about these opportunities with us from a commercial highlight is it creates real stickiness with us, with our clients, because now they know that the data points are there. We suggest that they get their Audience DNA profiles updated yearly. And what that does is it allows us to be able to understand more about their workforce and understand, okay, now that we're recruiting new people, what should we be looking for? And so it gets us into different areas of understanding personality, which is really key for us. So a growth strategy, precision growth, expanding our network, making sure that we deal with the right people, the right individuals, engaging those stakeholders. Senior leaders really are passionate about ensuring the money that they spend is getting used in the appropriate manner and is being heard the way that we need it to. The impact of what we can do is unrivaled within the industry. 50 years, as I mentioned, is really key for us. And then that partnership, embedding ourselves deeper into the accounts and understanding more about, okay, here's an event that we're doing. What should we do to moving it forward to say, here's a message I need to communicate. How should I do that? Should I be going and having it at the Kit Kat Club, or should I be going across the street to the Corinthia? What's the right venue for me for what I'm trying to do? And that partnership and then further understanding the audience is that much key. The impact of Foresight has been tremendous. So on top of some of the things that Tom had mentioned, when you look at to be able to understand more about cost controls and getting some of the measurements and KPIs and reporting in place, it's been the development of Invoku, really key for us as a differentiator out in the marketplace. The brand expansion, not just into Singapore, but the understanding of who we are. Social media presence is a lot greater presence on LinkedIn, which really allows us to be more of a thought leader within the industry and drive the type of change that we want. And we've been tracking and seeing a lot more people now doubling down on the message that we've been saying for a couple of years about neurodiversity is an advantage, not a disadvantage. Having everybody and understanding who they are as individuals is key to that growth and that development. The data infrastructure, as Anna had mentioned, really key for us, getting a proper CRM in place, proper accounting system in place to really start to market more effectively and understand the data that we need to. And then talent acceleration. It's been key for us, especially in Singapore and some of the members that we have currently. So that's it for me. And I'm just going to introduce the refreshment break time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to all of you who've come to the Shard today. It's a pleasure to see you. Thank you for our guests online. And thank you very much to our business leaders for walking us through three of their portfolio companies. A diverse range of businesses, but all very high potential. In terms of this presentation, hopefully reassuringly repetitive compared to last year and the year before's, I think if there's three key messages we'd like to get across, it's that it's the same strategy that we've been using for the last 10 years and that we continue to execute on. We continue to navigate some pretty choppy economic waters, and we continue to deliver excellent results both in portfolio value growth and portfolio company exits. So a quick description of Foresight Group, which Richard kindly did earlier, but the private equity team specifically. We work from 13 offices across the UK. We're a team of 62 people now. We're invested in over 200 SMEs across the UK. Last year, we reviewed over 3,000 business plans. And since 2010, we've delivered on average a 3.3 times money on money return when exiting our businesses. The headlines from 2024, we had 12 new joiners in the team. We made 4 new investments, deploying a total of £14.3 million across our 2 VCT funds, growth VCT funds as we call them. And there were 6 follow-ons into the portfolio for a total of £6 million across a range of sectors and parts of the UK. We had 3 exits, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail later, but we're extremely proud to have delivered 10 times money on money return when we exited Specac after a 9-year hold, 5.5 times money return when we exited Callan Lens after a 3-year hold, and 1.5 times money return on 200 Degrees, which was exited after a lot of hard work. And as you can see from that map, we're talking about a portfolio of companies spread across the UK, not clustered around London and the M25. That is supported by our range of offices across the UK. In 2024, we launched the Cardiff office, Belfast office, and Bristol office. We believe this regional presence gives us access to less competitive deals where other investors are not geographically based. It means pricing and deal structuring are less competitive. This range of portfolio and range of offices are supported by a team of 62 people. That large team means that we can maintain a good level of deal origination and fund deployment, but also provide hands-on support to our portfolio companies after investment. So what kind of companies are we targeting? This slide's been unchanged for, I think, 10 years. We're looking for growing, scalable businesses. We're looking for businesses that are established and ideally in non-cyclical sectors, so we shy away from consumer businesses. We're looking for strong management teams, which hopefully was made clear by the earlier presentations. We're looking for companies with a clear strategy and plan who know how they want to scale their business, but also management teams that are open to our input on strategy and willing to listen to our advice. And then we're looking for investments where we can achieve a reasonable valuation and deal structure to help drive the portfolio's returns. In terms of our strategic focus and what we believe differentiates us from other investment managers, again, this slide's been unchanged for about 10 years. We are following a regional approach, so we spend a lot of our time looking for investment opportunities outside of the M25. We also have a direct origination team, team members whose sole responsibility is to find companies that would be eligible for investment and are open to growth equity conversation. All that work feeds into less competitive investments where we can achieve more attractive valuations and investment structures. We're looking to build a portfolio with a balance of risk. So we look at later stage growth equity investments. We're looking for companies with a lower degree of cash burn than many of our peers. And as I said, we're looking for sector diversity. So this will become apparent in a later slide, but not just focusing on healthcare, on technology, but also investing in healthcare, business services, and even industrial businesses. And then flexible money, we manage a family of buyout funds as well, and we can sometimes use that capital to unlock deals that wouldn't otherwise be available to the VCTs. So KSL was a good example where a founder wanted to take cash off the table as part of the growth investment. We wouldn't have been able to do that with the VCTs because of VCT legislation, but we were able to use one of our buyout funds to unlock that deal. All of which leaves us with a portfolio that's well positioned for economic turbulence. So it's a diversified portfolio in a range of sectors. 85% of our investments have deal structuring that means Foresight benefits in the event, or the VCTs benefit in the event of underperformance. We're investing in companies with low cash burn, which means if orders are kicked to the right or delayed, the company is still on a sustainable platform. We provide hands-on support from our team, and the VCTs have liquidity for follow-ons. So if there are further growth opportunities, we can invest and support companies on their journey. When I reference multiple sector investments and a broader portfolio, hopefully this slide is useful. It shows the Foresight managed VCTs relative to their peers. Ultimately, you can see we've got a much lower allocation to technology and consumer businesses and a higher allocation to healthcare and business services businesses. We assess all our investments on merit on a fundamental basis, but we do consider sector diversity when making investment decisions.
Then you just explain what you step to where I can't see. Yes.
Apologies. So you've got the dark green is technology. So that would be sort of software businesses, highly scalable, but often with a higher cash burn. That pink at the bottom of the Foresight wheel is healthcare. The next one is business services, so companies like Live Group. And then consumer is the next segment in the wheel, which is about 6% of our portfolio. And then industrials and manufacturing, 12%. ESG, we use an overlay of ESG analysis on all Foresight funds. We measure against Foresight's 5 principles: awareness, environmental, social, governance, and third-party interactions. We apply these throughout the process, so from the first investment into the company, throughout the journey with Foresight, and during exit. And these objectives are all outcome-driven and award-winning. We're extremely proud for the awards we've won for our ESG approach. So just recapping on the last 12 months, these charts talk about the current economic landscape. For those who can't see as clearly, they're all experiencing a sharp drop when President Trump got going, except for the bottom right, which was a jump because that's consumers worried about losing their job. A bit like our strategy, this hasn't really changed. For the last 5 years, we've been talking about macroeconomic turbulence. The latest source is US policy, but in 2024, there was also a lot of concern around the UK general election and the Labour government's new budget. As I said, the charts show a drop in both CEO, manufacturer, and consumer confidence. All this has fed into disrupted supply chains, which has slowed down order placing. It's also slowed down M&A as CEOs and shareholders lose confidence, which could lead to exits from the portfolio taking longer. However, we consider ourselves well positioned for this environment. The team that I was talking about have been working very closely with companies impacted by the potential changes in tariffs. As we saw at the pie chart slide, only 6% of the portfolio is invested in consumer assets that are more sensitive to consumer sentiment. And this turbulence also provides opportunities, as Tom mentioned, at Evolved Dynamics. It's a real tailwind that the UK government now wants to procure increasingly a sovereign capability rather than buying equipment from the United States. I'll talk us through the portfolio and the pipeline of new investments that we're working on. So this is for Foresight VCT PLC. There's a very similar slide for Foresight Enterprise PLC, but this also includes a company called 200 Degrees Coffee, which was one of our consumer assets, but only held in Foresight VCT PLC. It was a company that made steady progress. We're relatively cool on consumer. We decided to exit it ahead of the general election. We sold it to Cafe Nero just before the Labour government came in and put up national insurance, which would have been a real blow to the business. So a well-timed exit. And then all the exits on this slide relate to both VCTs. So in 2024, we had Specac, which is a Kent-based laboratory equipment designer and manufacturer. We invested in that business for 9 years, helped them meaningfully in their product expansion, but also in a site move. Once the site move was completed, we were able to kick off an exit process, and we sold that business to a US private equity investor for a little over 10 times the money we invested. Callan Lens was a UAS, so sort of drone business we invested in about 4 years ago now, and we sold it about a year ago. Based in Wiltshire and Bristol, they designed and manufactured systems a little bigger than what we saw today, sort of 4-meter wingspan stuff. They went on a journey with a huge growth in revenue and expanded from 1 system to 4 systems, and we sold that to BAE Systems. The initial investment was just under £5 million. We committed a total of £10 million to Callan Lens, and we received 5.5 times our money at exit. And then we started the year strongly with HSL, which is a Belfast-headquartered medical equipment distributor, a business we've been in for 9 years. We helped it expand across the UK and Ireland, both organically and through acquisitions. And we exited early this year for a little over 8 times the money we initially invested to Asker Healthcare, which is a European consolidator. And the next slide just references valuations. We've got a conservatively valued portfolio, which is reflected in the current NAV. This slide just illustrates that in the 6 months prior to their exit, the average uplift in value to those portfolio companies as they switched from our standard valuation methodology to discounting offers received was 33%. So we think there's further growth in the portfolio. And then in terms of liquidity, we've got a good amount of cash to support future investments. You can see a very tall green bar on the left, I think you're right, which sort of skews things. That's Octopus Titan, but otherwise we think relative to our peers, a sensible amount of liquidity in the VCTs. We also like to highlight that we've got a low expense cap relative to our peers, and this translates into improved net performance for shareholders. So Foresight are the 2 on the far side of that chart. In terms of pipeline, we've got a very strong pipeline. That's in part reflective of a very active team, but also the fact that we've got a very clear, stable strategy that everyone in the team understands. So it's doing more of the same. And this pipeline shows you the range of sectors that we're looking at. A lot of these businesses are at different stages in their journey, which is helpful. And they're also geographically spread all over the UK, which reflects our regional office approach. Onto performance, we're extremely pleased with the NAV total returns that we've been delivering. The chart on the end there is our 3-year NAV total return performance, which is market leading. The chart next to it is our 5-year performance, which has been steadily increasing and hopefully will deliver some convergence with the 3-year performance. Specifically for Foresight VCT, in the last 5 years, we've paid out 35.3 pence worth of dividends, generating 53.3% total NAV return. And specifically in 2024, we realised £24.5 million of value and paid out £25 million of dividends. Similar story at Foresight Enterprise, 33 pence of dividend paid out over the last 5 years, a 34.6% total NAV return. And in 2024, we realised £28.5 million of value and paid out £35.8 million of dividends, which partly reflects dividends from realisations at the end of 2023. So in conclusion, we've got an established and proven strategy that we continue to execute. We've built a diversified portfolio, which we believe is well positioned for ongoing economic turbulence. We've delivered some excellent realisations in 2024, and that's continued into 2025. And we'll continue with our differentiated strategy, which we hope will deliver market-beating returns. Thank you.
Brilliant. We've got about 15 minutes or so for some questions. If we kind of get going into a bit of a rhythm, we can possibly extend that because I know that Margaret have got another meeting to perhaps go to. Do we have any questions from the audience inside the room that'd like to kick off with? Yes, sir.
We heard from Evolve about their activity in Ukraine. I was just wondering how much, apart from looking at regional activity, how much the VCTs or the manager look at all at businesses that may have some presence in the UK, but also have a lot of presence and activity and income generation outside the UK.
Sure. Very good question. The answer is the VCT legislation is built around investing in and supporting UK companies. So to be eligible for the VCTs, the company has to have a meaningful presence in the UK. There's certainly a number of portfolio companies that have presence in, Germany, North America, or in Evolve's case, Ukraine. But I would say 90% of the companies that we're meeting are early in the journey, UK focused. International growth is still some time away. I think the subsector that Tom's operating in sort of lends itself to a more international presence.
I think we had another question down here, sir. Just wait for the microphone. Thank you.
A question for the Foresight people. In the 2024 annual reports, you mentioned 2 or 3 companies that you exited at a significant loss. I think the name of Crossler is the one that made in my memory. Could you say a bit about the criteria and the processes you use in deciding whether to pull the plug or not?
Yeah, good question. It's never an easy judgment call. I think you call that Crosstown? I think in
Crosstown, I think.
Crosstown Donuts. Yeah. So that was a consumer investment in the portfolio. We hold a pretty high bar for consumer investments. We did a lot of work on the way in, getting comfortable with the sustainability of margin, but also the plan. I think the plan to expand outside of London suffered significantly when national minimum wage started kicking in and inflation. And so it was a company after that period of high inflation that was really going to struggle on a store economics basis. And that's really what led to making that very difficult decision. We did a lot of work with the team. We did a lot of work with financial advisors. We ended up handing it over to someone who's going to preserve the jobs in the business. But it did mean that we didn't realize a return on our exit.
Just before we come to the other person in the room, I have got you marked. There's an online question which sort of follows up from that, which maybe to our portfolio companies, which is how has the recent national insurance tax changes from the October budget affected your growth plans or just tax changes in general? Anna, would you like to kick us off perhaps?
I would say it's just made us more conscious about hiring people. Hence, when I spoke earlier about looking at AI and how that can prevent us from, our business model is reliant on an increase in inquiries. People have to inquire about having a hair transplant in order to get a surgery booked, and a human has to answer that call and book that person in. So the higher our inquiries go, the more resource heavy we become and resource reliant we become. So we've just been more conscious and tried to be ahead of the curve in terms of what can we do more efficiently in our workplace to prevent the need to recruit more, to keep a sustainable level of headcount for the next 2 to 3 years.
Great. Stephen, anything to...
Similar to Anna, it's a direct cost for us of an additional £54,000 per year. So similar to you, we've pulled back on some of our hiring and hiring one less person as a result of that. And then just focusing a lot more energy on efficiencies that we can gain with our current team.
Tom, might as well keep going.
I'm an accountant by background, so had it in the forecast, knew it was coming. The way that we've dealt with this is looking at our order intake forecast and having a sort of range of a sort of funnel of probable outcomes, and looking at our headcount in conjunction with that. And so just making sure that we're really clear on milestones and targets and how we're going to manage growth, or even make some tough decisions to reduce headcount if we need to, if we're not hitting our targets, and if we are delivering on those, making sure the forecast includes the increase.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I think we had a question. I'm just going to go to the gentleman in the back. I think he had his hand up. Yeah. Just wait for the microphone, sir, if you could.
Thanks. I mean, I suspect, like many people, I'm an investor in many different VCTs, but yours is particularly successful. And when I looked at that slide about the criteria that you use, actually, it's almost the same criteria that all the other ones use. So, why do you think you have been so successful for so consistently long?
Great question to you.
I don't know what we're paying you. Excellent question. I think I won't focus too much on our peers because I don't want to speak for others and I don't want to speak in generalities. But we manage venture funds, which have a much higher risk appetite, as well as these growth VCTs. And we often see those VCTs that we consider our peers bumping up against our venture funds on investment opportunities. So I think when they talk about established companies, it's a subjective term, I suppose. I think they're looking earlier in the journey than us. So we're looking at companies that have been around longer, near or have reached profitability. I think that lower cash burn and that proven market fit translates into us having a much lower failure rate, and still being able to capture that 10 times money on money return, which is great. I'm not aware of many peers who have the same level of regional presence as us. So I think you can bump into people who have the office in Leeds and a person in Manchester. But I think having an office in Belfast is pretty unique. Edinburgh likewise. And small deals don't travel far. And my experience going up to Edinburgh has been they don't like to talk to people with different accents either. So you need local teams who probably already have trusting relationships with the advisor community, bring that with them and can get the Foresight message out there effectively. So I do think we're meaningfully differentiated.
Yes, sir. The gentleman in the blue jacket.
Thank you. Fundraising. You've obviously grown a lot. Do you expect to continue increasing your fundraising every year? And I suppose my question is more general. Is there a maximum at which you can invest money into the UK venture capital?
Shall we give you a rest, Hugh, and maybe pose this to one of our board chairs? Michael, would you like to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think without being too specific, I think we will continue to grow the funds. I think it's really important from the point of view of being in the marketplace of a reasonable size, so the people that you're dealing with know that you've got the wherewithal to deal with them, and you've got you've got 62 investment professionals working there. You can only do that if you're a certain size. So I think that's important. I think with some of the criteria that we've got that's sort of forced upon us through the VCT rules as well, and sort of reinvesting and what have you, we actually have to take that into account as well. So I think raising fresh money is always a good thing, just to try and keep the doing buybacks, paying a decent dividend, investing for a longer time. So, for example, I mean, some of the periods of investment that we've seen in the past, we're I don't know, we could say fortunate or we're very skillful, but we've seen the two big exits that we had this last year. SpecAc was about 10 years and returned 10.5 times, but you had the other one, Callan Lens, which was only like 3 or 4 years, and we were able to return 5 times money on that. So I think, with that sort of differential, we have to give ourselves plenty of cash to make sure that we cover all of those bases.
Margaret, is there any, from your perspective?
I think it's it's important to make clear that actually the decision to fundraise is made by the board and not the manager. So it's an independent decision. The manager might recommend, and the manager will draw up cash flow forecasts, quite detailed ones going forward. But ultimately, our decision will be driven by the cash needs of the company and the interests of the company. So we will obviously look at what the pipeline of investments are, whether it's a promising pipeline or not, and then whether we can cover expenses. But I think it's also important to say that we won't raise more money than we think that we can actually use profitably. Some VCTs do go out for very large amounts of money, and I think we would prefer to do small and often rather than really large slugs, because holding surplus cash on the balance sheet can also be a real cash drag. It's not so bad when interest rates are high, but as they're falling. So we're very conscious. It's striking the right balance between having enough cash to take advantage of the opportunities, but not too much that it actually reflects on the performance of the company.
Super, yeah, thank you. Yes, so let's just wait for the microphone. Just back here. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I just thought for the investee companies who are here today, first of all, thank you very much for your insight into your businesses. But I thought it might be nice to hear why you chose Foresight, other than perhaps the price they were prepared to pay. But I'm sure it's a competitive market. Why did you decide to allow Foresight into your business? Thank you.
Who'd like to get Tom? Should we go reverse order again?
Yeah, it's Hugh, such a nice guy. He won the A. There, you set me up again. No, genuinely, actually, we spoke to. I actually used our sales CRM pipeline to build a roadshow and a list of potential investors. We hit up a big roadshow, and it's quite unique finding investors who are knowledgeable about the drone sector. So that was what I found particularly appealing. You could have the types of questions we were asked even in the early stages, and as the discussion evolved, were very they indicated an understanding of the market, the complexities, the types of customers, the types of challenges that we have. So it was the educated investor that was important to us.
Great. Stephen, could you?
Thank you. From my vantage point, it was, again, the people and the team and the interest that they took in genuinely understanding who we are as a management team, what our goals and objectives were, and the way that they could assist us on the journey to get to where we want to get to. Communicating to people is obviously something key and something that it resonates with a lot of team members personally as well as professionally. And having somebody that wanted to take that interest in us, what the journey we wanted to get to, and bringing that to a wider audience and them understanding it, Hugh got it pretty quickly. And that was really important for us to say, okay, this is, as cliche as it sounds, a real partnership to get us to where we want to go, and the care that they put into it as much as we do.
Great. Anna?
I mean, I can't really answer that because I wasn't here when the business, when Foresight invested. But having spoken to the original founder, who I've got a really good working relationship with, I think the transition was a really smooth one. I think it was a very simple transaction process for him, which I think really understands on Lloyd's character, I think is key to him. Yeah. And also as well, I think just from my perspective and his, since I've been in the business, like Stephen alluded to, there's a real understanding of what it is that this business needs in order to grow. And the autonomy that you also get from me personally, the autonomy that you get to make key business decisions to allow the business to grow has definitely been something that I've witnessed.
Super, thank you. I think we had one more question, gentleman in the burgundy shirt, if my eyes are good enough. Thank you. Do you just pass the microphone down?
Yeah, good afternoon. Just one general question, and it's really about the VCT mechanism and the exit strategies that you have to do. What is the kind of normal exit strategy, and what are other exit strategies? For instance, do any of your companies go to IPO, or most of them it looks like they were bought out by another company in the end? But can you comment on that a little bit? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll talk about that, and then maybe the chairs could talk a bit about dividend policy and how that all meshes together. But for us, we're thinking about exit before we've even made the investment, if that makes sense. So it's constantly feeding into how we assess the opportunity. you've got to be confident you're going to generate, we targeted 3x return. Sometimes we outperformed that, but it means you need to know who the potential buyer universe is. We haven't used IPOs for a long time because the IPO market has been pretty cool and valuations haven't been very attractive. And these are smaller companies. I mean, we grow them, but they're still, we subscale for IPOs generally. So you're then looking to sell to one of sort of three types of buyer, I suppose. You've got other sort of private equity style investors, which is something we saw with SpecAC, where there's a management team, they've got a strategy, and a financial sponsor will pay up to back that management team. You've got private equity backed companies, which we see increasingly in every exit process, where it's medium-sized companies, they're backed by a private equity investor, and that private equity investor is keen to use that company to acquire other companies and sort of aggregate an industry. And then you've got just straight up, like the Camelman's exit, sales to larger corporates that are independent. I would say it's really important to us that we go into that initial investment committee meeting to talk about the investment, to have a pretty clear view already on who's the likely buyer universe and what they value. And that translates into, I guess, what you've heard from the management teams today. Foresight coming, we're bringing those KPIs of an acquirer is going to be looking at these metrics. So let's make sure we're tracking them throughout the journey and we can give a really clear story at exit.
Margaret, Hugh suggested that you might want to talk about dividend policy. Is that something you're...
Just following
Just wait for the microphone for a second so we can...
In terms of following on from the realizations, we believe that shareholders would like to enjoy in the success of some of these companies. So when we do have exceptional exits, we are likely to give special dividends. And I know you would have benefited over the last 2 or 3 years of some quite exceptional special dividends. Well, we also understand that consistency of income is also important to our shareholders, and that's why we would have an ordinary dividend policy of distributing at least 5% of the latest published NAV. I think that's the same for those VCTs.
Michael, would you like to add anything to that?
I think the other thing that drives the specials as well is, again, the VCT rules as the reinvestment and what have you as well. So we're very conscious of how quickly we can reinvest the proceeds of these realizations that we get. But as you answered earlier, Margaret, I mean, we're very much driven by the cash flow as well as to what we're expecting and what we're looking to go. And we have got a view on when we're exiting as well. So we're taking all of these things into account when we're trying to get that balance right, because investors are looking for different things. Some are looking for a bit of income. Some are looking for, the potential share buybacks, because there is no natural market in the marketplace for selling your shares other than that particular source. So we're very cognizant of what the shareholders overall are looking for as far as the returns concerned.
Great. I'm just going to pause in the room and come to some of the questions that have been posed online, and these are to some of the investee companies. So I'm going to go top down. So Tom, given the sensitive nature of some of Evolve's technology, how do you go about protecting the IP and therefore protecting shareholder value?
IP is an interesting one. You can spend quite a lot of time trying to protect your IP in various mechanisms, but the pace of iteration, sometimes by the time you'd finished filing your patent, it's something which is not relevant anymore. So we have to kind of get that balance right and keep up with the pace. When you work with government agencies, and we've actually been successful in quite a lot of we had an Innovate UK grant, the Defence Accelerator Data grant. They're very well structured to protect the IP of the company that's involved. And then when we work with us, we've got some so-called kind of frenemy. We're working with potentially some competing platforms, but with technology that's unique to us, like our tether. Then we're really rigorous up front in terms of how we structure any reverse engineering. That's a primary way we look to protect the IP.
Great. Anna, you were nodding there. Do you have an IP? No?
No.
Okay, well, I do have a question for you, though, that's come through. So with KSL, how does a company market its services, and do you use celebrities? And off the back of that, with your scale-up plans, are there any potential constraints around that, given locations and doctors and things?
Oh, do we use celebrities? Yes, is the answer to that. It's one of our probably biggest sources of inquiry generation. Our marketing manager is fantastic with building these relationships with celebrities and key influencers in and around the UK. We aim to do a transplant on 12 celebrities per year, so an average one per month. And that in turn, backed by a campaign through our website and through our social media, drives the majority of our inquiries. So I'd say that that's our biggest source of inquiry generation.
Okay.
Along with some paid marketing, but mainly you'll be pleased to know a lot of our inquiry generation is online, non-paid.
Okay. And the second part of the question was around your growth strategy and does location have a big impact? Are there doctors or surgeons that you need?
It actually doesn't have as big an impact as what you think. A patient will travel up to 4 hours to get a transplant, even though that they're going to be in the surgical room for 6 to 8 hours. They will drive there and back or do a hotel stay. It's the consultation hubs that gives us the biggest reach. So us going to where people live, work and play, as I always say, we want to be where they are. So going there and being able to deliver an engaging consultation, sell them a transplant, and then they will be willing to travel to one of our surgical centres. That doesn't mean to say that there isn't white space available in the UK for further expansion. There absolutely is. We are in a good situation where we don't need to continue to expand from a surgical clinic point of view in order to reach our targets.
Great. Stephen, one for you, if I can find it here without my glasses. You mentioned about winning some very large contracts recently, so congratulations on that. But what impact does the economic environment have sort of for event businesses? Is that a significant headwind that you're going to start encountering perhaps?
So we have seen a little bit of that, and where we've experienced it is in people wanting to not appear to be spending as much money. So one of the events that we're doing for Aviva, they've decided to scale back their sales kickoff instead of having one large one to having 3 smaller ones around the world. Still spending the same amount of money, in fact, more, but optically it doesn't look like it's going to be as much that they're putting out there to the rest of their industry. So they're trying to scale back on those sorts of things. And then shorter decision-making time. We need to communicate messages because things are actually changing a lot quicker. So as a result, what we're seeing is smaller events that we need to communicate something that's happening either A, within an organization or B, to a client base. So let's put something together in 6 to 8 weeks rather than a lead time of 6 to 8 months.
Okay, great. I do have a few more, but I'm going to come back into the room. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir. White shirt.
Thanks. On the exits, I'm interested to know how the dynamics are within Foresight and also within either the founders or the investing managers as to who decides dumping this one or we're going to sell it now because it's a great price. Who drives that price negotiation?
Crikey, you've had it easy until now, Hugh.
So when you're exiting, like I said, an investment, we're already thinking about the exit. So when we write the investment agreement on the way in, it's already explicitly stated within 5 years, we'll be appointing a corporate financier to explore exit options. Foresight's typically a large majority shareholder, but with a good degree of controls in the investee company. And a number of those controls will be around allowing Foresight to deliver an exit and exit. It doesn't necessarily mean the management team or the founder are exiting. So you can have a scenario where a new private equity sponsor wants to come in. They can buy out Foresight, and what the management team or the former founder or whoever did is up to them to a certain extent. But it shouldn't be a surprise when that conversation happens about, are we doing an exit? Where does value need to be, etc. You're working as a team throughout the journey. Like I said, from day one, you have your KPIs pretty much mapped out of what does this company need to deliver, what's it need to look like. So as you deliver on those KPIs and start to approach, the conversation starts of, well, it looks like we're nearly ready for an exit. Let's start talking to exit advisors. Let's warm lawyers up, etc., etc. So it's not, no one in the room should be surprised with the exit discussions being had. And then there's an element of pragmatism on how does that exit look. So at SpecAC, it was a private equity investor who was willing to pay the most for the business, didn't want Foresight hanging around, but did want management on the journey. That frames that negotiation. At Callan Lens, it was just a trade acquisition. We want to own 100% of the business. We don't want any shareholders hanging around. That's fine. That frames that discussion. So there's always an element of pragmatism.
Just within that, when you got just wait for my crazy, so our guests online can hear.
Within that, when you've got the inquiries, so you've got an offer of 5 times, but the other people in the game say, I think it's worth 7 times. So you always have control over that decision. So or they might say, it's just whether you think we need to up this because it's not good enough yet.
Well, like I said, it's somewhat time dependent. So if we were 2 years into the journey, it might be a genuine debate of do we hang on or do we go? We've got a targeted holding period of 5 years. So like I said, in the transaction documents, when we invest, it's explicitly stated like after 5 years, we've got the right to go. And there's an element of explaining to the founders that we've sold lots of businesses before and they might have never been on that journey. So there's an element of this is my value add. This is where I'm here to help you. We've been on the journey. Let's not fumble the ball right at the end. Yeah.
Can I just be slightly contentious and just get your opinion on the flip side of this as investee companies? And
I mean, it's definitely clear to me. I joined KSL because of how transparent the exit process was. That's what I was looking for in my next step of my career. It's a very clear line of sight from point A to point B. And I understand what impact I can personally make, which was another reason why I joined the business. But the support and the communication in terms of transparency was absolutely crystal clear for me, but that was what I was looking for.
I would add it is absolutely clear. Every board meeting we have, it's 1 of 48, 2 of 48. We know when we want to start that exit. It ends up being that we actually have the conversation in our board meetings about how do we provide better shareholder value for Foresight and ergo for all of you. So it's something that's very top of mind for us and very aware and nothing that we shy away from. It's something that drives us even further to say, how do we get to those multipliers that are going to make it better for everybody involved?
Tom, anything to add?
Very similar. I think one of the first discussions with myself, the founder, and Hugh, we talked about 5 years, 4x return. I think he said 3x here, so you've done yes. That's something that we talked about was very, very clear throughout the whole process in the initial documentation in terms of the term offer. So no surprises.
Yeah, great. I'm going to take one more question from the room, then I've got one more from, I'm just conscious of time, we've overrun, but yes, gentleman at the back with the tan shirt.
Hi, thank you for your time today. It's a question for the VCT itself. You mentioned buybacks a couple of minutes ago, and I'm wondering in the context of VCTs versus other fund structures, one of the limitations of VCT, obviously the secondary market is very liquid. Questions around NAVs, which circle the whole industry, Saba Capital, putting a lot of pressure on investment trusts in terms of, how valid is that NAV amount. One way to combat that is a buyback. So do you think for Foresight or even for VCT in general, the use of buybacks could increase over time just to give that sense of consistency of NAV over a period of investment?
Thank you. I think this is something that we look at quite a bit. We look back at history as to what we've done in the past, what we might be doing going forward with the cash available and the investment opportunities. So it's, again, to my earlier answer, it's just trying to get that balance right. Because we do have, not necessarily conflicting, but we have a number of ways in which we can reward shareholders for their investment. And we've talked about the sort of running yield at 5%. We've talked about special dividends. But the other element that we pull on as well is share buybacks. And we've seen a lot of interest from time to time, but generally speaking, the interest that we see is not matched with people actually following through, if you like. So we see a huge amount of interest at certain periods during the year when we publish a net asset value and unit asset value. But when it comes to it, people want to just hold on and not necessarily sell. So we're very conscious of that. We monitor it very closely. I can't say what the future holds as far as demand for that's concerned, but we will take all of those things into account and trying to get that balance right to keep all of the shareholders as happy as we can, rather than just because we don't want to shrink the business either, because that goes on to other things that the answer I gave earlier about we need to be a certain size too, so we can't shrink it.
Margaret, would you like to add anything to that?
Just to say that, the companies do provide liquidity by operating regular buyback on a quarterly basis, and there are details in our annual report for doing that. I think, talking to our broker, there does seem to be more of a change in the profile of VCT investors and why they're buying them. So I think there's a younger generation that are beginning to buy VCTs because of some of the pension constraints and some of the tax, obviously the tax benefits you can get from VCTs. And so they may hold them on for longer, but they may be churning their investments, where some of the older investors may be holding them for longer because they want the income and are happy to wait for capital growth to come through. So I think that might also determine the level of buybacks going forward. But we do understand the need for buybacks because the secondary market is more or less non-existent because of the tax benefits you only get when we issue new shares and not when you buy in the secondary market.
Great, thank you. Right, I've got one last question which has come through in multiple forms online, Hugh. I'm sorry about this, but it's Trump and tariffs and impact on the existing portfolio and potential M&A activity. What's your view, just to wrap up?
I think very valid question. Like I said in my presentation, we probably have 4 or 5 years where it's been macroeconomic shock after macroeconomic shock of pandemic, war in Europe, shipping disruption, inflation, rising interest rates, UK election, new budget, and now there's a new US president. So in some ways, it's more of the same, that hands-on approach that we've been discussing. Throughout the last 4 or 5 years, we stayed very close to portfolio companies and tried to aggregate the experience that we're having across the broader Foresight family of 200 plus SMEs. So when Sybil's loans came out, it was very much a case of one CFO cracked it, and then we quickly tried to get that information out across the portfolio. I think tariffs is something similar, where we're trying to we and everyone else is trying to understand the true impact and true cost of that, and very quickly share that information across the portfolio. I've been surprised at how few of our portfolio companies are really impacted by tariffs in the first order. There's not that much revenue being generated in the United States. It's more the second order impact of, as I said, confidence. And I think when confidence is hit, decisions get taken more slowly, which is understandable. That can slow down purchasing decisions. I think Tom was talking earlier, UK government is slowing down its decision-making on defence until it's completed a review. That's informed somewhat by what Donald Trump's doing. All of that feeds into, for these companies, oftentimes revenue shifting to the right. And it's making sure that you're prepared as a board and as a team, that if your orders do come in later, that if revenue is generated later, you're still in a stable financial position and you're still well positioned to pick up on opportunities when that demand does come back. But it's disruptive, but it's been a really disruptive environment for the last 5 years, and the portfolio has performed well because of a lot of the hard work of management teams like the people sat next to them.
I think that's a great way to end, Hugh. Thank you very much for that. Thank you to our chairs of the boards. Thank you for allowing yourself access to the people in the room and online. Thanks to our speakers for giving them us an insight into their businesses and how they operate. I hope it's been enjoyable for you to listen to. I hope it's been a benefit for you to stay close to your investments. Thanks to all of our guests online as well. I think we're going to close it here. Because there's some afternoon tea, you'll be able to chat to our speakers and obviously Hugh over a drink. So thank you very much.